Now for number 19, we're supposed to take the equation 2x plus 3y equals 6 and find the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and graph it. And it says, how do you know the shape of this graph before you graph it? And that is one thing I wanted to address right off the bat. Notice this problem is an x to the first power and a y to the first power. That immediately tells us we have a straight line. And if you have a straight line, it is sufficient to just graph the x-intercept, the y-intercept, connect the dots, and you're done. If you have a curve, finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept is a good idea, but it's not going to give you all the information you need to graph it. But in this case, because we have a straight line, we're good to go. So to find an x-intercept, I need you to know that you need to set y equal to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, so that's how you find an x-intercept. So I have 2x plus 3 times 0 is equal to 6. 3 times 0 is just 0, so you can ignore that and say 2x is equal to 6. I can divide both sides by 2 to get x is equal to 3. And in point form, that's the 0.30. Part B, to find the y-intercept, you said x is equal to 0. Okay, you do the opposite. So I have 2 times 0 plus 3y is equal to 6. 2 times 0 is 0. That gives me 3y is equal to 6. That gives me y is 2 when I divide both sides by 3. That gives me the 0.02. Now next we're supposed to graph, so I'm going to take my x-intercept, which remember is 3, 0, and make a dot on my graph. My y-intercept, which is 0, 2, and make a dot on my graph, and just use a straight edge, which I can't do very well on this tablet, but just assume I did. Straight edge, and connect the dots. And there you go. There's your graph. And again, how do you know it's a straight line? Because you have x to the first power and y to the first power. That is a perfect sign that you're dealing with a straight line. One thing I want to point out, you never put the x and y intercept together. Like that 0.32, that's a no-no. So make sure you keep those as two separate points. X-intercept is always some number 0. Y-intercept is always 0 and some number. All right, for problem 20, I actually have to graph 3 separate lines. So I'm going to do this on 3 separate pages. And of course, we're going to do A first. So y equals negative 1/2 x plus 4. Now, we could do it like we just did the last problem by finding the x and y intercepts. But you know what? It's already in slope-intercept form. What does that mean? This is y equals mx plus b. So I know right off the bat my m value is negative 1/2 and my b value is 4. Now what does that mean? That the slope, rise over run, we rise negative 1 and we run 2. Another way to say that is we go down 1 and right 2. Because positive means up, negative means down. When you run, positive means to the right, negative means to the left. Now another option is we could take that negative with the bottom. We could also rise up 1 and go left 2. So when you have a negative, you have a choice. Do you want to take it with the numerator or the denominator? And you can do both if you want to. But the first thing we have to do is find our y-intercept. And this is the b. The b is the y value of the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 0, 4. That's the first thing I'm going to do is mark my y-intercept at 0, 4. Then I'm going to go down 1, right 2. And remember the alternative is we could go up 1 and left 2. And notice that creates the same straight line. If you do that correctly, you'll be on the same line no matter which approach you take. And there you go. First one done. Now the next graph, b, y equals 3. Now notice, if you think about that in terms of y equals mx plus b, that's a little weird. Although you can think about it in terms of y equals mx plus b. That'd be y equals 0x because there's no x at all plus b. Which means our slope is 0, which means we don't rise up any and we run as much as you want to. But I think it's better to memorize the fact that if you have y equals a number, no x's at all, that is a horizontal line. So you just need to know that. I think that's the safest way. Another way to approach it is if you were to do a t-table. Since y is 3, no matter what you plug in for x, y is 3. Now, since there's no place to plug in x, x can be any number you want, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That will also give you that horizontal line that we're talking about at 3. So, for instance, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. See, there's that horizontal line. But I think it really is just smarter just to memorize that y equals a number is a horizontal line, which means the next one, x equals a number, must be a vertical line, and it absolutely is. So we're graphing x equals -2. Now this is the one equation that there's no way in the world you can write this as y equals mx plus b because there is no y. So what you're going to have to do is think about it. First of all, it's just a vertical line at x equals -2. If you didn't remember that, here's what you know. If you try to do a t-table, x, no matter what's -2. You can't pick anything you want because it's fixed at -2. Y can be absolutely anything you want, like 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of like we did the last problem. So if x is -2 and y is 1, that would be there. If x is -2 and y is 2, that would be there. If x is -2 and y is 3, you see the point. So that's going to give us that vertical line at x is equal to -2. My line doesn't look terribly vertical, but just pretend that it is. Now the last type of problem, and we have several of these, we're going to knock out. We want to write equations for the lines that meet each of the following conditions. Write your result in slope-intercept form. And I'm going to do these like the homework presented. So what do we have? Well, we have 2 points. Now, what I want to work with every time is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. What you need to remember when you use that formula is that you're supposed to plug in for y1, m, and x1. And that's the information you need. Now, notice we have not been given an m, but we can certainly find it by using the formula that slope is equal to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So y2, we could say, is 1 minus y1, which is 4. I just did the second y minus the first y. At the denominator, I'm going to do the same thing. The second x, which is 6, minus the first x, which is -3. Notice the 2 negatives. Be really careful with that. So if I continue simplifying, 1 subtract 4 is -3. 6 plus 3 is 9. That reduces to -1/3. So I know my m is -1/3. Now I'm ready to plug into my formula. So y minus, now my y1, I can either use -3,4 or 6,1. So let's just use 4 for my y value equals -1/3 for my slope, and then x minus a -3. So I used this set of points. Now what if you didn't want to use that set and you wanted to use 6,1? You can. I promise you'll get the same answer. What you have to do, though, is required is use the slope of -1/3. So I keep going because my answer is not in slope-intercept form. So I say y subtract 4 equals -1/3 x. Remember, these two negatives turn positive right here. So -1/3 times 3 is going to be -3/3, right? When you multiply fractions together, you multiply numerator times numerator, so -1 times +3 is -3, and denominator times denominator, which is 3 times 1 is 3. Now, of course, that's 1, and that's going to be the next thing that I do. So I'm going to say this is y minus 4 equals -1/3 x minus 1. I'm going to add 4 to both sides of this equation to get my final result, which is y is -1/3 x plus 3. So next problem, same story. We'll now write the equation for a line that passes through the point -4, 0 and parallel to y equals -2x plus 1. So ultimately my goal is to substitute in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And once again, just to remind you, I need a y1, an m, and an x1. If you'll notice, I have a y1 and an x1, the -4, 0. But I don't have a slope. But they gave us this equation over here, y equals negative 2x plus 1, to find a line parallel to that. Well, parallel means you have the same slope. So anytime it says parallel, that means use the same slope as the information they gave you. Well, the slope of that line, because it's already in y equals mx plus b form, is negative 2. So since I'm using the same slope, I want to use negative 2. So here we go. So y minus my y1 is 0 equals m, which is negative 2, times x minus my x1 is negative 4. Notice the two negatives. The minus is from the formula, and the negative goes with the 4. So y minus 0 is y. This is going to give me negative 2. This minus a negative is going to be x plus 4. I distribute the negative 2 inside and get y equals negative 2x minus 8. And there's my final answer. So question C, again, same question. Write the equation of the line. We need the formula y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Just to remind you once again, we need a y1, an m, and an x1. We have a y1 and an x1. Actually, an x1 and a y1 if we're talking about the same order. We don't have a slope. We're given information to find a slope though. Okay, so the information over here to our right, that's going to help us find slope. Now, two things. Perpendicular means we need to use the negative reciprocal of the slope of this line. But you know what? I can't tell what the slope of that line is. So first step is going to be find the slope of 2x minus 3y minus 5 equals 0. If you're thinking, isn't it 2? It's not. The slope is not the number times x unless it's in y equals mx plus b form. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the y by itself. The fastest way to do that actually is to move the negative 3y over there and make it positive. So I'm going to say 2x minus 5 equals positive 3y, and then divide everything by 3. Now that gives me 2/3 x minus 5/3 is equal to y. Now, that doesn't look like y equals mx plus b, but it totally is. Let's write y on the left, and we have 2/3 x minus 5/3, and you will see that your slope is right there is 2/3. Now, that's not the slope I want to use, right? The slope I want to use is the negative reciprocal of this. So our m perpendicular is negative 3 over 2. Flip it and change the sign. Then I'm ready to plug in my formula. Y minus my y1 is negative 4 equals m, which is negative 3/2 times x minus my x1 is negative 2. So this is y plus 4 is equal to negative 3/2 times x plus 2. Distribute that negative 3/2 inside to give me y plus 4 is negative 3/2 x. Remember that 2 is over 1, so those 2's cancel when you multiply. That's going to be minus 3. Make sure you see that. Okay, subtract the 4 on both sides, and my final result is y is equal to negative 3/2 x minus 7. Okay, so again, careful right back up here. When you multiply negative 3/2 times 2 over 1, you could say that's just negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. 2 times 1 is 2. And see, that still gives you that negative 3 right there, if you needed an extra view of that. All right, almost finished. 2 more problems. So this time we're supposed to write the equation of a line that passes through the point 3, negative 2. And it's a vertical line. Now, you'll remember vertical lines are always x equals a number. There's no y involved whatsoever. So that might tell you right off the bat your answer is x equals 3. But let's look at a picture of what's happening too. So now I'm supposed to pass through the point 3, negative 2. So I'm just going to plot that point, right? And I'm supposed to have a vertical line going through 3, negative 2. So this is what my line is supposed to look like. Well, what's the equation of that line? Well, x equals 3, right? It's a vertical line right on top of x equals 3. So if it asks for just a straight up vertical line, all you need is an x value to pull that off. So if they give you a point that passes through, then there's your x value right there. So x equals 3 is the final answer there. In our last problem, again, write the equation of a line that meets the conditions. We want to pass through 3, negative 2, and this time we want a horizontal line. Now, if you'll remember, horizontal lines are always y equals a number. And in this case, our y is negative 2. That is the answer. But visually, if it helps to see it, again, you plot the point 3, negative 2, that's right here. I need a horizontal line that passes through that point. That would be that line right there. And notice that is y equals negative 2. So it's all the y values down here at negative 2. And so that's your winner right there. And that wraps up our review. Hope you have a good day.